Research shows that the majority of people trust TV news more than radio because, if you can see it, it must be true. Nowhere is this logic more suspect than in the coverage of politics.
How often does this format reach the truth?
This is going to end in tears, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. I think the Prime Minister is absolutely right to exercise our veto, and what great support he had in Parliament today, and I think there will be a lot of support in the country as well.
It's really different from the quality of an interview on the radio, which is pretty rigorous. It's difficult to wriggle out of a difficult question on the radio. It's easy as pie on the box. Just pick up a soundbite and you seem to satisfy the interviewer. Well done, John Major. He hasn't even given George Gardner a cup of tea. That shows the way in which he treats the 92 group when they attempt to hold him to ransom.
If you concentrate above all on having a camera there live when a politician speaks, when something happens in the political arena, it plays into the hands of politicians who've become very, very skillful at news management. It provides a channel by which they can deliver a very carefully prepared and selective message directly to the audience.
The Speaker's move was welcomed by the MPs involved. Are you completely satisfied that what you did was honourable?
I'm completely satisfied that I acted in good faith, and I look forward to giving evidence to this inquiry.
And when did TV news last break a big story or seriously embarrass the government ahead of the newspapers?
Watching the coverage of the Cash for Questions scandal, it was embarrassingly clear how far the cameras lagged behind Fleet Street.
The Prime Minister wanted the matter to be looked into at the highest possible level, and tomorrow the Commons is expected to vote for the conduct of the MPs and the way the Sunday Times obtained the story to be considered by...
Perhaps it's difficult to be independent when, like the BBC, you depend for the renewal of your charter on the government. Far better to lick than bite the hand that feeds you.
Investigations don't have to be expensive. They don't have to run to a half-hour World in Action. They don't have to run to a 45-minute panorama. One of the interesting responses by politicians to the Cash for Questions Sunday Times story was, look, there's a lot of low-level corruption going on in Westminster. Why isn't anyone doing anything about it? Which is my question. Why isn't television news doing anything about it?
Broadcasters welcome today's decision.
Well, I think it's a good day for journalism, and I think it's a good day too for the peace process. And what it means is that we're really going to be able to do our job properly.
And where was journalistic integrity during the Northern Ireland broadcasting ban? The broadcasters were quick enough to show their faces and air their retrospective dismay on the day that the ban was lifted.
We can now ensure that we can rigorously take to task all those people from whatever side of the community in Northern Ireland.
After all, who were the real ventriloquists' dummies here?
Because of government restrictions, his words are spoken by an actor.
As veteran Northern Ireland correspondent Desmond Hamill pointed out just before the ban was lifted.
No one has actually, to my knowledge, ever stood up and tried to test that ban. No one has actually had the guts to say, sod that. If we can put the guy's face on, if we can report his words, let's report what they sound like. I mean, I really don't see what the difference is. But for some reason or other, no one has had the guts to do that. And that, I think, is because, again, the obsession for ratings, the worry maybe in the BBC over whether their charter is going to be renewed, it all comes back down to money.
The government clicked some time ago that if ministers didn't mention, say, Greenpeace, then neither would the news. Things only become news if the government makes them news.
Now, one of the successes of this government in getting its own way has been to shift the whole news agenda to the right. So views that would have looked centrist a few years ago are now seen as really being unacceptably leftist. And there are programme editors who simply regard stories on the environment, on unemployment, as being boring, as being not on the agenda. Reporters come up with ideas on those stories and are told that they are simply not going to be done.
But other voices are only too ubiquitous. Business and city coverage rarely looks beyond Treasury press releases.
And in gruesome close-up, we get the same bunch of city pundits, all politically neutral, of course.
We don't know exactly what will happen, but if Labour were to win, I think people would be worried about public spending, public borrowing, and what might happen to the exchange rate.
We journalists talk with great pomposity about the need, the right to tell the truth and that sort of thing, but we completely forget that we tell a totally edited version of the truth. And I don't think we discuss enough what it is that we should be showing. We are sort of influenced by pressures, by what we think the viewers want to see, by what other networks are doing, sometimes by what the American networks are doing. And it all comes about in this, what I might call, mishmashy sort of way, not out of any real proper consideration of what we should be doing.
I believe that TV news stops us seeing the world properly because it's too busy keeping an admiring eye on itself. The glib formulas and reporters who look like Cindy's boyfriend do not add up to journalism. Television news is an instrument of democracy. If it persists in treating the trivial and the serious with the same thumping sense of significance, if this is the style to which we are to become accustomed, then how will anything seem new? How will anything surprise us or make us think? Some viewers may find the picture outlined in tonight's programme distressing. I certainly hope so. Good night.